Do you want to build a very strong brand? If that's the case, then this episode is for you. In this episode, we're gonna talk about one single direct message. To explain what one direct single message means, it means that you have consistent messaging all throughout your branding. It's the key to building and maintaining a strong foundation for your brand. Imagine if your brand keeps on saying you're this, and then on the next season, you change your messaging to that, and then next season, you change your messaging to something completely different or left field from what you started with. It would make your audience confused, and you don't want that. If, for example, you're a mass brand, all of a sudden you become a luxury brand, it doesn't make sense. Imagine if Zara focused on being high-end all of a sudden instead of something for fast fashion. It would be difficult to sell something like that because that's their selling point, that it's affordable, fast fashion market. Each season for a collection, every part of your business should be at least consistent with what we call your core brand values. So with that, we're going to talk about the core brand values and having a one single direct message for your brand. Let's go. So the key here is to be consistent. So how do you stay consistent? I'll tell you 4 key important factors to staying consistent with your brand. It's not boring, but it means that you are in line always with the direction that you want to show your audience. First one is, of course, a single direct message. Having a single direct message is important because consistency is all about a single direct message that talks about your brand's values, the identity that you have, your tone of voice, and the style. And that is all presented in what we call a focused and consistent way all the time. It's like a flat line. It doesn't change its messaging. It's focused and it's consistent, like one single direct line. Every time you have a ripple in your brand, it goes up and down. It gets your market confused, and you don't want that. When your market gets confused of what your identity is, that's when you lose your buyers. So that's number 1. A single direct message is very important for you. Moving on to the next one, which is a constant repetition. Constant means continuous, disciplined repetition. It's doing the same thing over and over and over again with a little twist. You emphasize your brand's message or values repeatedly that you can tap into what we call your customer's subconsciousness. If you recall some brands that became, really hype previously that have triggered your subconsciousness, like for example, on the top of my head, I would say Antisocial Social Club. It triggered the subconsciousness of people that you are antisocial, even if you're not. I'll not go into details in that. It triggers a market wherein they believe that they are in the market of being antisocial. So they belong. And that message does not change. For other brands, it may be the type of quality or colors that they use, the type of stitching, or the color combinations that they use for their brand. It's consistent. Or the fonts that they use for their designs are consistent. It's a constant repetition of what your brand is. Imagine if a Supreme Box logo font changed all the time. It will become unrecognizable, right? It won't have the same mystique or value that it has up to now. Imagine if the box logo changed. The design can change, but the font, it has not changed. They could do the fade, the reverse, etc. They can have glitters and all they want, Swarovski and whatever. But the print stays the same. So it's consistent. So that's an example of constant repetition. So it settles in your subconsciousness as a buyer. Next is to stay focused. Focus on selected core items that stand for your brand so that your customers can sort of recognize your main selling points. People need to know your main selling points and your unique selling points at the same time. So developing too many products too quickly or going past your main core item will not do you good. It will distract and confuse your customers. Just like an example, for example, if you make bags and all of a sudden you make socks, it just doesn't make sense. If you make hoodies and all of a sudden you make tank tops, it makes your market confused. So if you started with t-shirts, focus on t-shirts. That's why a lot of brands are successful when they start with t-shirts because, for example, here in the Philippines, most people always buy t-shirts. That's the basic thing that a person would buy. It's not a sweatshirt or a polo shirt or a hoodie or a tank top. It will always be a t-shirt. Like with my brands, for example, with Rilla, 90% of what we make are shirts. And it's the bestseller. Like we sell 35,000 of that just for one avenue by itself. 35,000 pieces a month just for that one shirt. I'm talking about 15 designs, but total of 35,000 shirts. That's mass market. market. Focus on that. The Philippines will always be a t-shirt heavy country. It will never be about hoodies or jackets or bomber jackets. We're not in the States. We're in a tropical country. I mean, we have 2 seasons. It's hot or hotter. That's it. It's an inside joke always for fashion. Like, we don't have 4 seasons, right? We only have 2 seasons, hot or hotter. Stay focused on your select core items. Everything else will just bring noise for your brand. I talk about adding noise to your brand in my previous fashion episodes. Last important tip to staying consistent is to provide guidelines to your team members. If you have a team, everyone needs to be on the same page when it comes to direction, especially the owner of the brand and the creative director. If you're one and the same, that's fine. But if you have a team like your graphic artist, it's a different person, or your social media person is different, you all have to know your single direct message. After all, we're talking about one single direct message. Create brand guidelines. It's very important. Create brand guidelines that explain your brand's values, your mission, your propositions, the differentiation, and most importantly, what we call the tone of voice. Your tone of voice is really important because everyone needs to know the tone of voice that you're speaking across. The entire team needs to know the tone of voice that you're talking about. They should be shared within the whole company. If you can plaster it on your walls in your office, you should, whatever your core messaging is. So include that in marketing, your design development. Take that into consideration, including your production team, third-party consultants, freelancers, and other potential partners that you may have. Everyone needs to know what you are trying to put out as a message. Because if it's not clear stated to everyone, then your market is going to become confused. That's why we're talking about one single direct message. So those are 4 ways to stay consistent and being within your one single direct message. So being consistent avoids confusion all throughout. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to avoid confusion within your target niche or market. It allows customers to understand what your brand stands for, and it helps them recognize you instantly. Like what I said with Supreme Box Logo. Once you see the box logo, oh, that's Supreme. Or that is that brand or this brand. That's how a logo becomes so recognizable. It's not because it's popular, because they know already what it stands for, what it means. Like a symbol of a Mercedes-Benz, you already know it's about high-end, quality, German ingenuity. Question of the day. What is your brand's one single direct message? Let me know. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the challenges that you need to overcome with your single direct message. It will entail about ever-changing trends, balancing between creativity and consistency, and so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about that in the next episode. See you on the next episode of Retail Fashion Business.